Okay, hold your horses. Here we go. Right, so Greenlaws Mine. It really is the forgotten mine of Weardale. Really is. Um, just in case you don't know where it is, I'm just gonna make that smaller. It's actually in the north of England, just below Northumbria and Scotland, and in the county of Durham. So it's about 265 miles north of London, where Shanice is, and it's about 5 hours from here. On the map of Weardale, you can see there's lots of all the usual. Can you see my cursor moving? Lots of the usual well-known mines: Boltzburn, Fraser's Hush, Grove Rake, Camberkeels, and then we've got Greenlaws just over on the other side of the valley here, just above St John's Chapel. So it's about a kilometre, I suppose, south of St John's Chapel. And it was actually worked as long ago as the Roman times, would you believe? And it's made up of two parallel veins, the east and the west Greenlaws vein. Both of them were worked, but the east vein appears to have been worked and was far more productive, shall we say. It closed around 1897, which is when the lead market dropped out of the bottom, and was never actually reworked for fluorspar, which a lot of the other ones were in the 70s and 80s, like Blackzine and Fraser's. And there are many historic specimens in old collections that are actually mislabeled as coming from some of the other mines when they're actually from Greenlaws. And the team have actually more recently gone back into the Natural History Museum, rummaging through the drawers with permission, of course, and have found actually a lot more of these labelled specimens that have been attributed to other mines in the area. So very complex geology. And in actual fact, the geology has been recently updated to include some new ideas regarding the formation of the minerals in the area. And the mine has been reopened a couple of times, or at least there have been some attempts to reopen it, including up until the early 2000s. Now, just to give you an idea of what it looks like from the air, this is what's remaining of the mine buildings and the mine area itself. So you've got the burn running through the middle here, and either side you've got the remainder of the bows teams. I'll explain all about that in a minute. The big reservoirs, this was to help run some of the water wheels and some of the other machinery. The wood store, and that was where they had all of their timber stored for the underground, and the mine buildings and huts and the tunnel and things. So this is one of the aerial shots that one of our guys did, and you can see it a little bit clearer. So that's what was the wood store. This is one lot of bows teams. This is another. And this is the mine house that also would have been a place where the guys would have been lodging. You can just see here, this is one of the remainders of the water wheels. There's an awful lot of it actually was destroyed. There was a big flood in 1995, and it washed an awful lot of the soil and stuff down and actually buried an awful lot of stuff. So there's some of the water management system that's still standing. And this is an actual photograph. It's one of the remaining photographs, or one of the only photographs, rather, of the water wheels and part of the dressing floor. And this is now actually buried under all of that debris that washed down the hill. So again, this is an aerial thing of, this is the dense level, or the middle adit. And these are the bows teams here. Um, Now, the bows teams, in case you didn't know, bows is a local word that the lead miners used, and it's basically um, ore, or the rubbish ore, really. So there would be teams of miners, uh, families, or a couple of guys working a level, and they would tip all the ore. It would come along here, and it would be tipped into one of these bins that would store it until it was ready to be sorted and put through the crusher on the dressing floor. So you can see they were quite large. So just to give you an idea, this is what it would have looked like. This is one of the remaining photographs at the Allen Heads mine, which is very similar layout, really, in the 19th century. So you can see these the bow steeds or teams, and the crushed ore would be brought over here to the crushing mill and sorted and dressed. Normally, at one stage that would have been done by women actually, but they decided in the was it late 1700s that the work would be easier if it was done by young lads. I think they saved 150 jobs or something by moving it over to the young lads rather than the women. Don't know why. Um, so this is the mine store. It's used for storage at the moment by the farm. But at one stage it was more than just the store. So they didn't just get their daily stuff from it. It was also like a lot of these lead mines, it would have been where the guys would either have stayed overnight, or if they didn't stay overnight, um, there would be room in there for them to change. So it'd be like a changing room. They could wash their clothes, hang it up to dry, and it'd be ready for them the next day when they came into work. But it's where they would store their food and all sorts of stuff. So it was more than just a place to buy their candles and their tools. So this is the remainder of the timber store. Nice archway. Um, so the timber store, as I say, most of these mines would have had their own carpenters and timbermen. The timbermen would have been the guys that went underground with the timbers, which had to be a minimum of 5 inches across. Um, and those would be used for either shoring up the ceiling or shoring up the shafts. But they were real craftsmen, as well as the woodsmen and the carpenters that did everything above ground. And they probably would have got the wood from the company's own plantations. You'll see on some of the maps that there's plantations marked all the way around Weardale. I didn't have a clue what that meant until I actually started researching this. The fact that they actually grew their own wood for the mines. Quite fascinating, really. So a little bit about the history. So the mine itself opened around 1700 by the Beaumont family, and they actually owned an awful lot of the mines in the area. In later years, it was run by the Weardale Lead Company, and over 50,000 tonnes of lead were produced between that 100 years. It never produced commercial fluorspar, and the spar at Greenlaws is actually very low in silica, and nobody seems to know why, because it was never assessed. So Dunham never actually went underground when he did his survey. In fact, he used his protege, John Earp, to do the survey. It was his first survey. And he only assessed the vein widths based on old records. So there you go. So the current project group, who've got a lease for the mine, it's owned by the Patterson family, started actually digging there in 2009. It was September 2009. I'm just going to show you briefly the actual mine map. So the area that we're interested in is, sorry, it's sideways on, but that was the only way that we could fit it in. You can see down here, these are actually the plantations where the wood was grown. This is the area that we're interested in, but you can see the length of the vein and the mine itself. It's absolutely huge. It's massive. So this is a close-up of that veins, and it gives you, this was the original map that we were working off of, that we had access to. And it actually shows where certain digs have got up to at certain lengths of time. So in 2020, they'd got this far. This is looking, so this is like a looking down over the top of it. So if you imagine all of these like a layer cake, but looking at it from the top rather than sideways on, it's very mine maps generally can be quite confusing if you're not actually used to reading them. You haven't got a clue. It's not like looking at the underground map. They don't lay it out all nice and neat for you. You have to sort of figure out what level you're on, and they overlap one on top of the other. So just to give you a quick run through. Actually, I think it'll be actually easier if I show you on one of the other maps. This is what we had to work with, just so that you know. And this is a cross section. Again, this is just one end of the map, and that's the other end. It's huge. This is the actual shaft that the explorers went through, and they're actually on this level here. Now, this is actually the summary of the assessment that did on the mine with Dunham. And you can see there was lots of crossings out and things on this actual thing, and Dunham himself actually corrects him in some of his assessments on the mine. There's an awful lot for you to read, so I'm not going to bother too much with that, but oh, just a few pretties, just keep you going. So we had a couple of bits cut and polished to actually present to the Patterson family, because I don't think they could quite believe what was coming out the hole in the ground. But this is we had about 7 or 8 cut stones done from one crystal, and actually presented it to them. We thought that was a nice thing for them to do, so they had an idea of what was going on their land. I'm going to talk a little bit about the mineralisation, not too much, because it can be a little bit tedious if you're not into that kind of stuff. And I know that really all you came along to see were all the pretty pictures. So we will get to those. So briefly, the mineralisation in the North Pennines, it's carboniferous sedimentary stuff, mostly limestones and sandstones. And basically it's fairly simple. Lots of fluorite, lots of galena being the main principal ore minerals, and a few other things like sphalerite and pyrite and things. So that's an idealised cut through. That's your cake section through of all of the limestones, the hazels. What is interesting is when we get through all of this stuff, and this is clearly represented when, if you ever do get the opportunity to climb down the shaft, you will actually see some of this stuff as you climb down through it, particularly some of the hazels and things. And the slaty stuff. It's quite loose. The windsill is actually more interesting. We'll get onto that in a little minute. I'm sure a lot of people have actually seen this map before, showing the ore field and the main fluorite zone, which is the purple bit. The green part is mainly where you tend to get zinc bearing lodes and veins, like around Nanthead. Very pretty sphanerites up there, but the rest of it is very heavily mineralized in fluorite. Um, you can read that for yourself. Uh, there's always been a lot of controversy over how a lot of mineralization has formed. A lot of people have always said about it being to do with the granite batholith and the heat coming off that, but it's actually now thought that it's more to do with the wind sill, despite I think everyone sort of took their leave by what Dunham had said about the granite and its effect on the mineralisation in the area. But as you'll note at the bottom, it's since been disproved by a group of people with doctorates up the wazoo from Durham University. And I know somebody else said, well, people are always trying to prove their theories are the right ones and that the ones that have gone before have been wrong. But, we wait to see. But they're suggesting that there should be a revised age and a revised structural model to do with the geology for the whole of the North Pennine ore field and the Alston block, which is no small ask. And they're basically saying it's all to do with the intrusion of the wind sill and the related base metal mineralisation and nothing to do with the granite batholith, which is what everyone else has said. And remarkably, this does seem to support our own theories about the origins of the mineralisation. We've always thought it was a bit strange, and that it didn't actually match up with the preconceived ideas of what was going on with the geology. It didn't make sense. So, more questions. And we're convinced that the answers do lie within Greenlaws. We're certain there's further physical evidence within the mine to provide proof to the latest theories regarding the age of the geology and the wind sill influences on its genesis. So we have invited the guys with the doctorates to come and have a look for themselves. And other people are interested in doing exactly that. Here's a pretty one just to keep you interested. Nice apple pie bit. A little bit more of the geology. Just in case anyone didn't know what a flat was, when people refer to the flats, they're not talking about a block of flats. They're talking about the actual mineralized veins, which are a horizontal vein, which are formed by metal-rich brines and hydrothermal fluids, and they're normally in fault plains. In mining, what often happens is veins, particularly in the Alston block area, tend to be vertical. In which case, when they're mined, they mine them with a stope. These are mined completely differently. So in Greenlaws, the fracturing of the host rock has resulted in an almost cuboidal fracture pattern, and you can see that clearly on some of the maps that we've done. The actual adits tunnels follow the shape of a cube in many areas within the mine. You can actually see it when you actually walk down the mines as well. And again, we're back to the fact that there's very little silica, or quartz crystals, which there are in some of the other mines, like Camber Keels, for instance, and Blackdean. So this is a hand-drawn map, which they were working off, and you can see very clearly, particularly down the bottom here, these cubed squares of where the adits and the tunnels are actually following the flats. Now, this photograph shows what the mine was like initially back in 2009 when Pete first went up onto the fell. And the reason that he went up onto the fell side in the first place was because he'd been badgered to go up there by a guy called there's Jackson, who he'd rescued many years before in a collapsed mine on Corbeck Fells, I think it was, and he'd been going on about this mine for donkey's years. So eventually, September 2009, he walked up the fell and had a look with the Pattinson family's permission. And they said, yeah, by all means, go ahead. Go in and see what you want to do and explore it and clear it out. And so that's what they set about doing. And this was from the entrance looking back down the fell side. So the first thing they did was to clear it out. They got some heavy machinery up there and started to clear it out. So this is the Firestone level. And originally, it had been tentatively explored by a guy called Charles Clark back in the early 1990s, I guess, and then into the 2000s. And he actually then started work with the Lawsons in the early 2000s with the exploration. But first of all, he went in the Firestone adit and actually dewatered it. This is Pete's landy at the time. At the time, there wasn't a road up to the mine entrance. You had to drive across country, and as you can see, even with a four-wheel drive, how boggy it is, and even a four-wheel drive gets bogged down to the axle. So they decided that they really needed to build a road, and that's what they went and did. So 2 miles of roadway. They set about building it. They got all the heavy machinery and stuff up there. And actually, Pete didn't do it by himself. It was with the help of the local council who provided the petrol and some of the heavy machinery and the guys to actually do it. And they set about building this road. And as you can see, it goes all the way up from here. This is the original Jackson's level, which is several hundred feet below where the actual mine entrance is up here. So let's go back one. So you can see the road going up here. These are sheep. And that's where the mine entrance itself, the Firestone level, is. This is it from there. This is an old reservoir. And just here I put the pink hammer. This is actually the adit that Charles Clark and the Lawsons actually gained entry to the mine to Jackson's level back in the early 2000s. So this is the entrance from the air. Old spoil heaps and stuff. And this is the entrance just here. So these old guys, this is Mike Patterson. He sadly died last year. This is Les Jackson, the guy that Pete rescued from the fells, and this is one of the other Patterson guys, Neil, I think. So, put your wellies on, we're going in. Ta-da! This is the Firestone level. And this is what it looked like when they first went in there. You can see on the walls where the water level came up to. It was completely flooded when Charles Clark first went in there and he dewatered it. They actually found this tub, this ore tub, in there. If you can see, it's still on the rails. These rails are made of wood and they are in such good condition. They're probably the best preserved Victorian rails in the world, I should think. So this was the digging team at the time. They've changed lots and lots over the years. And this is the start of digging out the shaft. Now you walk several hundred feet into the adit on the Firestone level. Originally the shaft was completely collapsed and filled in right the way up to ground level. And then they started to dig it. It used to be just like a weekend project that Pete would do at the weekends, and every now and then he'd sort of ring me up and he'd say, when are you coming down this hole? I'm not going to go and start digging a hole in the middle of the night. I said, not until you get to the bottom. Tell me when you get to the bottom. So that carried on for quite a few years. So this was the start of it. And as you can see, these are original bits of wood from the old shaft. But they carried on digging for 4 or so years. and eventually did get down to the bottom. So this is looking up the shaft, bearing in mind, I've not told you how deep the shaft is yet. Just give you a little idea, these telephone poles that have all been cut and put in, there's over 200 of those. The shaft itself is about 270 foot. I don't know what that is in meters, but it's a bloody long way down. It's laddered all the way down to the bottom, and as you can see, there's whatever that is, a chute for stuff to go up and down with equipment and things. At the top of the chute, there is a motor. It's actually originally from an old motorbike, I think. But that's for getting things up and down the shaft. They are going to cut away a little bit of the roof in the adit there and make it a little bit bigger and a bit with something with a bit more welly to it, shall we say. Oh, this was a little bit of tongue-in-cheek. They took this photo of the Tonka toys. These are little plastic Tonka toys on the thing, on the mine dump, with the snow-capped fell side in the distance. And somebody got hold of this photograph, and there was like, they published it in the local newspaper, and there was local outrage that they should be using heavy digging machinery on the fell side. Obviously they weren't, they were just Tonka toys, but I can't believe that people believed they were real. Anyway, yes, this is Pete going knee deep through the snow. You know, you have to be pretty hardy to be a miner in the North Pennines. It does get some of the worst weather in the country. And yeah, he is going to dig out the mine entrance. This is how passionate they are about this mine. But that is the mine entrance that he's walking towards. And this is the generator to get things going with the air and make sure it's all safe to use. Trapped it. Can you see the tiny little hole he's climbed through back into the mine? That was like another 40-foot drift that he's crawled through. So in order to make it open up a little bit easier and to get into, they put a entranceway on the entrance to the adit. Unfortunately, they didn't take into account the weight of snow, and this happened. So it got crumpled. It's been repaired since, but anyway. The sun does actually shine in Weardale sometimes, not often, but sometimes. It's a beautiful part of the world, it really is. And it's also beautiful underground. This is one of the first plates that Pete managed to dig out of the mine. He's looking very happy with himself. When they got to the bottom, this is what greeted them. And it just went from strength to strength. Now this one was one of the first ones that any of us saw. And it was actually one that Charles Clark collected back in the 1990s. It's probably one of the most prized colours that you can get. It's very, very uncommon, very rare. And I don't think we've actually seen one exactly the same colour ever since then. Superb colour. Now, this is in the Natural History Museum. Remember me saying about there being lots of different specimens that have been attributed to other mines. So some of these are ones in the Russell collection and several other collections, but you can see how beautiful these are. Actually, these citrus yellow colour are actually from Greenlaws. We think they're probably from the scar level, down at quarry level. But as they don't actually say whereabouts in the mine they're from, that's a tricky one. Some more pretties for you to look at. Just give you an idea of the vast array of colours that you get in this mine. It's not just, people think it's just purple stuff. And actually it isn't. It's actually mostly yellow. But the thing is that when you look at them, they've got a purple outer edge. most of the fluorite is yellow when you look at it properly or when it's backlit. But yeah, nice colours. This one is probably originally from the bottom of the pocket. It's got chalcopyrite in the top bit. You can actually see that. But it's actually, Jeff, when he photographed this, actually orientated it the wrong way up. In the pocket, it would have been the other way up. If you have a look at the siderite on these faces, they would have been in solution originally. It would have been sat in a soup, if you like, of different clay mineralized stuff. And the siderite would have formed on the top faces. So that's obviously orientated upside down. You can always tell which way up in the pocket it would have been by where the siderite is. And again, if there's chalcopyrite in it, generally speaking, it probably would have been on the bottom of the pocket, not the top. So that's a good indicator for you. So you may have heard of people referring to the old man. The old man is a generic term that we tend to use to refer to the miners of the time. It's an affectionate term, if you like. So here we have a instance of the old man, or the lead miners of the time, actually hand drilling. So one of the guys holds onto the drill bit or the chisel, and the other guy has got a massive great hammer, and he swings a hammer and hits that, and each time he draws it back, sorry, the other guy will give the chisel a half turn before it's hit again, and again a half turn, and then hit again. And this is before they brought out things like pneumatic drills. It's very slow, very laborious, very sweaty, dirty, horrible work. And if you note, just here, they've got tallow candles, and they're actually in a blob of clay on the wall. That's how they would have lit their way. And this is an example of one of those tallow candles. And I'm assured that when it's alight, it does actually smell of cooking beef. So, you know, it doubles up with, if they actually do get sort of trapped down the mine, they can actually eat their candles. So I'm not sure I'd like to do that, but anyway. Chisels. We found an awful lot of these chisels and stuff down the mine. And if you note, on the actual chisels themselves, they've been marked by not just the Beaumonts, but also the Weardale Lead Company logos. When the Beaumonts sold up and gave away all of their assets, it was obviously easier just to stamp the Weardale Lead Company's logo on there as well, as rather than get some more. Now, this is a very rare find. Incidentally, all the finds that we find down the mine, all of the old stuff, it's all preserved as best as we can. It's set aside somewhere safe if needs be, or it's cordoned off so it's not disturbed. And there are other artifacts that have been actually given to the Weardale Museum and Killip Museum as well. So the whole point about this project is that it's a non-commercial enterprise. It's all about the research. It's all about the history and preservation. So this is a powder flask, and it's very rare in that there are still remnants of the black powder inside the flask. In order to, it's obviously, explosives. I don't think it'll be explosive now because it's probably very wet, but even so, yeah, a very rare find. We were lucky to find that. And the other thing that we discovered was that the Patterson family still had the original mine store book. from the 1800s, which is astounding that they still had hold of this. Um, and it actually shows, from 1876, for instance, how many candles they had, how many shafts, which are for the tools like the scrapers, the picks, that kind of thing, hammers, coils of fuse, boxes of caps, shovels, all that kind of stuff. But more interestingly, towards the end, um, when the lead crash happened, the bottom fell out the lead market in the 1880s. There was an awful lot of the lead miners were suddenly without a job. Some of the mines closed, some were sold off, some closed without ever reopening. At the back of the book, it actually has a couple of names in there which I've been researching. T. Madison, that's actually a J as well. R and J Natras. Now, the Natras family, several generations, and the Madisons all worked down the mine. And the Natras family actually got on a boat and left Weardale May the 13th, 1892. And the reason for that is not only the crash of the lead, but also that John Natras, the father, the husband of this lady, died in an accident in the mine the year before. And they got on this boat, the Doon Castle, which was built a few years previously, and it was built specifically to take people to South Africa, Mozambique, and that's where a lot of the miners ended up going. Just to put some faces to names. This is at the middle level of Greenlaws, late 1800s. Jack Madison and Wilson Coulthard, and you'll see some of the names of those actually in the mine itself, and Jim Madison. The Madisons were one of the families that moved away, emigrated. And one guy in particular, not one of these, but their brother, Tom Madison, he's the guy here with the tash, was one of the Weardale miners. He ended up working in a copper mine in Rhodesia, but he didn't stay there. He came back to Weardale some years later and ended up being the manager of Boltzburn Mine. Here he is, looking very dapper. Not at all the Weardale miner or Rhodesian miner that he'd become. And now for the underground. So it took the team 7 years to dig out the shaft to a depth of about 260 feet. It feels like a hell of a lot more when you're climbing up and down that ladder, I can tell you. And a further 2 years digging the connecting tunnel into the original old workings, which is where they are now in the flat drift. And they finally broke through the flats in the autumn of 2018. I'm just going to play this.
Ooh. Hello.
How's the tunnel coming on?
Well, it's easy digging at the moment, but
Yeah.
got little fluorite specimens in the back of it. Yeah, it's good. Now I know what an old miner must have felt like.
So this is the hole that they drilled to get through into the main flats where they are now. It's only a tiny little hole, but they thought it was only right to include Charles Clark. And here's Charles at the breakthrough. Yeah, it was quite right to include him at this sort of momentous occasion. I should think it was a little bit like breaking through into Tutankhamun's thing, with wondrous things. This is a mine elf. No, it's not really. This is Steve. He's one that's taken a lot of these photos underground. He's in one of the shafts there. That's looking up one of the other shafts. I'm just going to take you on a brief tour now around the mine. This is a miner's boot, and you can see very clearly the sole is all it's been resold several times, but it's metal. So these were boots or clogs made with leather strapping. Um, and if you look around an awful lot of these mines, people mistake the boot impressions for horseshoe marks because they look almost identical, and they probably would have been made in the blacksmiths on site, the same by the same guy that did the horseshoes, to be fair. Now, because the mine tunnels are actually named, and awful lot of them are named after the guys that worked them, so we can say for a fact that this boot belonged to Joseph or John Natras. And again, as I say, this is one of the families that I've been looking at. There were several generations of them worked there. So as you can see, this is what they tend to do. They do tend to sort of mark areas off so that people don't trample all through them. But these are at least 150 years old, these boot prints. And again, the barrow boards. In a lot of areas of the mine, they weren't big enough to actually have the horses or ponies in. They actually had just one or two levels, the wagon way, which was big enough for horses and ponies to actually pull sledges and things. This was actually the barrow boards were there to help the guys pull along either a sledge on wooden runners or a small wheelbarrow with their oar in it. And quite often it would then get shoved down a shaft to the horse below on the wagon way. This is one of the mapping things underground, 1866, May 16th. There's an awful lot of these around, along with the targets and a lot of other marks on the walls from the surveying. There was also a lot of graffiti down it. Well, I say a lot. There was a fair bit of graffiti from the miners themselves. There was a couple of really strange ones. One of them was a quote from the Bible, actually, which was "Bridle your tongue, John Natras." So somebody had obviously had a falling out with John Natras and was basically telling him to shut his mouth or to behave himself. And there was another one that the guys came across, which kind of put the willies up of them a bit, which was "Prepare to meet thy God," which is a little bit chilling. I'm not quite sure who that was to or why. But anyway, interesting stuff to see these bits of graffiti from 200 years ago. So, this is a nice powder keg, remarkably intact. And again, more boot prints. But you can see what I mean about some of these things looking like hoof prints. But it does look almost, I mean, it's wet. So it's almost like somebody's walked down the tunnel ahead of you. It's bizarre, that feeling that you can almost reach out and touch these things through time, history. Amazing. This is the remains of an air door. With a lot of these mines, the air was really foul, dreadful, with this, particularly with the explosives and things. So they all had chest problems, pneumonia, bronchitis, asthma. Not a great place to work, really. Another flask. I'm just going to quickly run through a lot of these things because I'm aware of the time. This was a laser mapped survey that we did a few years ago in 2019. We have since updated it and used some new stuff. So that just gives you a little bit of an idea of where we were with the breakthrough just here with the new tunnel. We've since built another tunnel through here, which is the Toon Tunnel. That's now the rat hole. And this is the updated map. You probably can't read that very well, but it does give you an idea of where the pockets and things are. So this is the shaft. This is the tunnels and entrance. That's the remains of the air door that I showed you just now. But you've also got things like the apple pie pocket, Cromwell's, Nico's, Midnight, Gargantuan Green, and the Leopard Pocket and Puppy Dog, and a few others. This is where the old man's gift is, so called because when they came round the corner there was this massive block of fluorite, really pretty, just laid out there and ready to go, almost as if the old man had left it there on purpose. It was probably too heavy to get out of the mine, to be fair, like a lot of these things. And indications of where that wall graffiti was as well. Incidentally, I think up here is where the Lawsons got to and where they're digging to actually join up the tunnels now. And just a quickie just to show you what it's like to wash out one of the pockets.
Now this piece here, I could be wrong, but you're probably looking at a world-class specimen coming out here.
Yeah.
This is just...
That's just mud up there, isn't it, where you're at now, Pete?
That's mud.
Yeah.
If we can get that off the top of the crystal without damaging them. Stop and have a look. As you see, all the rubble down here, it's beautiful clear blue crystals, but there's a couple of loose bits there. That's mud, but that, there's a little bit of movement in it. That piece there, you see that one?
That entire piece is just going to lift clear.
Just lift that clear. It sort of comes out a squish. It's double-sided. Lovely little piece with crystals on both sides. It's a little river fluorspar.
Yeah.
Probably almost transparent. I'll pop that down there.
You just look what's revealed as the mud comes away, though. Just look at those lovely sharp edges.
It's magnificent, isn't it?
Yeah.
Now this, folks, is what, well, as I said before, 4 or 5 years. I think it's 4 years and 2 months sinking a shaft. And you start seeing pieces like this, and you think, well, we weren't actually aiming to make money out of this dig. I think for us it's been the sheer satisfaction of actually getting into the Greenlaws flats. Everybody said it couldn't be done.
That's for sure.
And now here we are sitting looking at this stuff. It is just extraordinary. It's a privilege,
it is,
really, to have the chance to collect in these sorts of conditions. I've got to say, I'm just going to point out a little piece here. This is a peculiarity of Greenlaws, and these are some of the most amazing little specimens. Can you see that little tabular fluorspar?
Yeah, yeah.
Incredible little thing. It's a bit like the big crystal table thing that in the start of 2000, you know, in the film.
Ah, yeah.
There's that great big table just sticking up. But look at that, isn't that sweet?
It is.
Beautiful piece.
I'll take that one.
Oh, folks, this piece here is loose. It's, as we clear it off, there's a crack around it, right around the top. So at some point today, I think we'll drop this out.
So what's that? That's about 1 foot by 1.5 foot, 2-inch crystals on edge.
Yep. Rather pretty. Sort of a raspberry purple colour when you see them in daylight. We've got bits out before and looked at them. They are absolutely staggering.
Okay.
So we've got some very, very beautiful specimens to come out of here. Okay.
Over and out.
Over and out.
So that just gives you a taster of what it's like to be in one of those cavities when they're washing it out. This is one of the bullseyes that I was talking about in survey marks, but you can also see there's soot and stuff from the candles and some of the blasting patterns. This is a remainder of a barrow board. It just goes to show that, you know, they're walking through history the whole time here, and people are very aware of it in the mine. There's an awful lot more of exploring to do. I'm just quickly whizzing through these just so that you can get a taster. You know, there's lots of nails and wedges, powder kegs and casks, wheelbarrows. This is interesting. This is actually a tally. So the miners, when they actually do tubs or whatever, actually make it, they're putting a tally on the wall with globs of clay. So they know how much they've done that day or that week and what they need to be paid for. These are a couple of lead miners outside the middle level in Greenlaws. Sorry about the resolution there. But if you have a look at this cart, actually, I just wanted to point out that some of these are not totally enclosed. These wooden ones are designed specifically for putting boards and timbers in. They're open specifically for that so that they can take the timbers underground. And if you have a look at the way he's got his candle, these were the original lights that they used. So open-sided tin with a hole in the bottom that they fed the candle up through. And these worked much better than just having the candle in the little clay sconces, because it stopped them getting blown out by drafts and things quite so much. So this is a couple of cavities in situ, just to give you an idea of what it's like just having a little bit of the stuff washed out. And I just wanted to show you as well that these marks in the clay were made 200 odd years ago by the miners themselves. You do find some of the crystals in the pockets are damaged, and it's not through them being collected that they're like that. They're like that because the guides, the old man would go down the corridor or down the tunnels and shove the chisel against the wall just to see if it would go into any clay pockets. So that's what some of that's from. And again, you can see the marks within those pockets and the finger marks from the guys 200 odd years ago. This is actually taken in Boltzburn Mine, 1910, just to give you an idea. Not too much different from what it was like when the lead miners in Greenlaws were working. And again, more artifacts, clay pipes and stuff. And this is actually interesting, corduroy, where one of the guys 200 odd years ago knelt down in the mud. How amazing is that you've got the imprint of the guy's trousers? Pete lying down on the job. This is actually a place called the Lucky Frog Pocket. And the reason it's called the Lucky Frog Pocket is because they found a couple of frogs, like 200 odd feet underground. It's like, where the hell did they come from? And apparently Charles says that he found a couple as well before now. So they decided they would rescue the said frog and take it up top again. So that's what they did. I'm not sure if the frog is really happy about the whole idea or what's going through his mind, but anyway, it was released into the wild. But that's where the name the Lucky Frog Pocket comes from, just in case anybody's heard of that. Yeah, this is one of our guys, Ed, being crushed by not a micro. This is actually a massive plate out of the gargantuan green pocket. It's called gargantuan green for a reason. Underground, it's actually a greenish colour. When you bring it up top, it goes purple. And again, it's one of these weird things with fluorite, and particularly this type of fluorite, is that it looks completely different underground to what it looks in the daylight. And indeed in incandescent light and LEDs. So this is the same thing underground. You can see what I mean. Gargantuan green. It's that beautiful apple green colour. Strange. Strange stuff. All these different wavelengths in light. Short video. Puppy dog, if we got time. We've got time, Shanice? Yeah. Good. Go for it.
Okay, folks, we are in
the area of puppy dog pocket. It's rather a large area of pockets, which is going to take, I think, quite a long time to, you can see here, these are all interconnected. It goes from the roof up there through here and into there, so it's pretty massive. And the biggest cavity or series of cavities is just here by my feet. You'll see here a few pieces that have come out, but these are just the remains. The best pieces are staggeringly good. Deep purple. So I'm going to go through, so I think Lucy will probably snap it off, and then we'll do another one when I'm in the roof there.
Yeah.
It's just staggering.
Yeah.
It's a metre across. You get an idea of just, we've got an acro prop on it just holding that big slab.
This one's got no finish, has it? It's
no finish. We don't know where it goes. It's huge. It's just incredible. I mean, there's a massive hole behind it. Heaven knows what's up in that hole yet. There's just tons and tons of clay. There's barrow loads of it up there.
Yeah.
It's a big chamber. It's like a cave. And then that comes across up over our heads. And we've got another cave in here, which is, again, it's just unending.
There you go. That just gives you an idea again of puppy dog. If you've heard of puppy dog, it is a series of caverns rather than just one pocket. It's not one pocket, it's a massive area. In the same way that Cromwell's is now beginning to go that way. So a little bit about the fluorite habit. It's always cubic in the North Pennines. There's quite often penetration twins. You see that in a lot of the mines in Weardale. They're normally twins only when they're small. When they're larger, they tend not to be. They tend to be unusually, or that they're unusual if they are larger than 3 centimetres and twinned. So, so you do get the growth hillocks and different faces on the twinned crystals. You tend not to see that quite so much on that. They tend to be more castellated and what have you on the larger ones. And they also have those opaque white centres on the big ones as well, which either are microscopic bubbles or voids within the crystal, but they're not quite sure how they're formed. So they don't know if it's etching on the fluorite or within the fluorite, or if it's to do with partial dissolution or what. They're not quite sure how they form. But you do find that across the whole of the Pennines. This is one that's a bit more gemmy. Nice, yummy, gemmy twins. And these ones are not twins, but they're beautifully gemmy nonetheless. And you can see again with these, you've got sort of a blue edge to them, a bluey purple edge, but a lovely peachy pink colour. They do tend to be a sort of gemmier around the edge and more opaque in the middle. And just briefly touching on the funkies and what they are. We keep calling these things funkies because they simply are just amazing recrystallizations and regrowths. Yes, funkies is not a technical term. They tend to be a lot more opaque. They tend to be more pastel shades, and they don't tend to fluoresce as well as the primary crystals. So they also look very similar to ones that are found in Blackdean and some of the other mines. So shades of pink, lilac, blue, green, yellow, peach, just beautiful, elongated, reticulated, and just amazing things. So I've done a brief thing just to show you. This is one specimen that shows very clearly the primary crystal growth on the one side and the recrystallized underside. And what's happened is that it's fallen off the side of the pocket through either, drying out or through earthquakes, tremors, whatever. There's been a change in the atmosphere of the actual pocket that it's growing in, and it falls face down into the fluid at the bottom, which is probably made up of completely different mineralization as the original stuff, and the crystals tend to regrow, but they regrow in a different color and different orientation. You do find that the orientation of the crystal growth is determined by the fluid direction. So in this one, you can actually see the recrystallization I've indicated with an arrow is across this way. So with the elongated, reticulated crystal growth, you can see lots of crystals and they're all growing in that direction. So fascinating, absolutely fascinating. This is backlit. There's no other artificial colour used whatsoever. It's just a simple torch just to show you the amazing colour change throughout this mass. And again, just beautiful, beautiful crystallization. This is one amazing thing, from the smallest to the largest, and in normal light and daylight. This has literally been moved a matter of 6 inches for you to get the difference in the change of colour. Some of them do have names just to help us distinguish them. Funky King from the Fluorite Heaven Pocket. Funky Heaven, yeah, it is Funky Heaven Pocket. Yeah, lovely stack of crystals there. And some of these recrystallizations are amazing. Not sure if that is contact twinning or what kind of twinning it is, but it's amazing crystallization, whatever it is. There's an awful lot of these that are complete floaters. Just fascinating things. This one you may have seen depicted in the painting by Chris. Absolutely beautiful, beautiful specimen, really is. Lovely soft pastel shades. This one's less pastel, but still striking. How about that for a yellow one? And again, that's got chalcopyrite crystals in it. But again, you can see the amazing vicinal faces on the, the growth patterns and things. Superb. And just to give you an idea of the cut and polished stones, if you remember, I showed you one earlier on. This is from the same stone, would you believe? See, there's amazing colour zones in that. And again, backlit and with daylight fluorescence and without. And again, this one backlit and with fluorescence. This one's a massive big one, couple of 18 inches across. Beautiful cranberry colour. And this is from the leopard pocket. I'm just going to quickly whiz through these. This isn't the leopard pocket, this is the old man's gift, but and with lead as well. So nice galena is showing on that one. 4-inch crystals with that. And obviously they've left most of the roof of the pocket, of the leopard pocket, for people to actually see when they come to visit. If you've been to the Bakewell show, you will have seen these on display, or at Munich, or indeed at the Sussex show a couple of years ago. I just wanted to show that in that light and in that light. just give you an idea of how they can look completely different. And again, these are very cloudy in the centre with beautiful gemmy outer edges. Just really yummy. This one's called Electra. For obvious reasons, it's absolutely electric blue. And so gemmy, just beautiful. And again, this one from the puppy dog cavity. That cavity that you just saw being washed out. Superb daylight fluorescence. Amazing. And some nice twins. And a bit of zoning. Let's talk about the zoning. I'm flummoxed as to how there's so many different colours of zoning in these crystals. Obviously, it has something to do with the geochemistry, and we actually have one of our members, Sam, who did her degree on this. She actually did her thesis on the colour zonation and the fluorescence and what causes it in the mine. But it just gives you a hint of the sorts of coloration in the zoning that you can get. These are just a few snaps that we've done. That's apple pie. And again, it's a taster of the different colours that you can get. This one I took Cromwell pocket piece. Again, superb coloration. This one's got some chalcopyrite in it as well, this twin. But yeah, just gives you an idea. Not my glass of wine. A small cube. So there's more exploration to do. We're using new technology, using lots of gizmos and gadgets like LiDAR, 3D mapping, and virtual tours and all of that. So it's going to go on for many years yet, I'm sure. And it really is a unique exploration and mapping and research project in Weardale. So just gives you an idea of what it was like underground for the old man. And this forgotten treasure, this forgotten mine of Weardale. Oh, this is one of the LiDAR things. I won't run it because it's... this is one of the LiDAR things of the fluorite. Just give you a taster again of what modern technology can do. So yes, there's years of exploration left above the flat drift and below it. They've already walked in Jackson's level, some 200 foot below the flat drift, which is where they are now. And shafts that go even deeper. There is a really very deep shaft, the engine hydraulic shaft, that may or may not still have the hydraulic lift in there. There's kilometres of 3D mapping to do. And there's also the geology and geochemistry to look at a little bit more to understand what's actually happening on the structural controls of the ore body. So, and just to finish up, I hope I've not gone on too long and you're not all asleep. Girdle your loins. Did I mention that Charles Clark was also a world-class didgeridoo player? Very sadly, he's no longer with us. He died last year. But just to see us out, this is him in the mine.
That's so Not really. Wow, that's amazing. Brilliant.
Something like that. I would think a soundtrack of somebody climbing the ladder of increasing steepness, and as there might be a narrative, a commentary, and as you get to the hardest bit on that ladder, then the tempo quickens a bit.
Yeah.
You know, as the adrenaline's pumping, because you can only get your toe end on the run. You know that there's a couple of places where it's a bit tight.
There we go. Thank you very much for your patience with the start of that. And thank you for listening, those that are still awake and haven't gone to sleep.
Thank you so much, Colleen. Really
Thank
appreciate
you.
that.